which starts with the cornerback coming in from San Jose State and Javion Cole. What's the scouting report on Mr. Cole?
Yeah, so he was a 3-star portal transfer, number 1 in the portal currently out of the cornerbacks, even over like a 5-star Cormani McLean. Pro Football Focus had a passer rating of 40.8 when thrown his way. He had 3 interceptions and 10 pass breakups, which were both top 6 in the country last year. So he's definitely a ball hawk type cornerback. I think he plays the ball better than anyone Texas has on their roster currently. I guess you can include him now. So I think he's the best at playing the ball out of all the cornerbacks. I will say he's a little bit undersized. He's 5'10", he's 175. In a PK system, he usually likes the big, long, lengthy corners like Malik Muhammad, who's 6 foot, 6'1". But overall, I think he's a good player. I think he's a slight upgrade over Terrence Brooks, even though I do think Terrence Brooks probably has more upside. I think Javion Cole's a nice player who, if he just plays to his ability, will be the starting cornerback on the opposite side of Malik Muhammad. I think you'll have Gavin Holmes, just like last year, come in, take him out at some point for 10 to 20% of the snaps, but you're going to see him mostly on the field. And then maybe Kobe Black competes for that second starting cornerback, really highly rated coming out of high school. Some sites had him as a low 5-star, most had him as a high 4-star. I think this cornerback position group got a little bit better with this addition. And again, Pro Football Focus had him as a top 20 cornerback overall. So he's definitely a draftable player as well. So slight upgrade here over Terrence Brooks. I think Texas did okay in the portal. I think they could have done a little bit better, but overall it isn't a bad addition, Mark.
All right. So if we look at passing attacks against San Jose State last year, no, this is not breaking down specifically, of course, who he faced as a receiver, quarterback combination, or in any way looking at his side of the field. But just in general, USC obviously could fling it as well as anyone with Caleb Williams at quarterback. Again, we'd have to dive into the deep numbers there. Oregon State the next week with San Jose State's a non-conference opponent, really good football team, but not much of a passing attack. Although with DJ Uiagalelei, they threw it more effectively and more often than they had before that. And then they went deep into their Mountain West Conference schedule, aside from a date at Toledo against the Rockets, really good MAC team that won the conference last year or made it to the conference championship game. And then in the bowl game, they took on Grayson McCall and Coastal Carolina. And they fared pretty well in these games after the first 2 outings against USC, giving up 56 and Oregon State 42. And we see his stat line for the season with 38 tackles. And as you mentioned, 3 picks. And if you look at the game log, anything jumps out here. Let's see. He had his picks against New Mexico, Utah State, and Hawaii. Yeah, 3 games in a row. There it is, right in the middle of the season. And passes defense, 10 on the season, 3 against Toledo in particular. So Pro Football Focus obviously puts more of a spotlight on it in regards to grinding down the performance. And you said that wasn't a 40% completion percentage. That was a 40 quarterback rating?
Yeah, 40.8 passer rating when thrown against. So, I mean, and just the tape shows you, to me, he plays the ball very well. He's definitely one of those guys where I think he's more of a boom or bust guy. When he's there, he's going to come down with it. And I think if with the right coaching, he can be the best or second best cornerback on this team. Like I said, I think it's a slight upgrade over Terrence Brooks. It's not Tacario Davis. Tacario Davis takes this secondary to, in my opinion, to another level. But I think this is a solid addition and solid starting addition. And like I said, Texas and Steve Sarkisian is going to play the best player. So it's either going to be him, Gavin Holmes, or if Kobe Black really shines out, he's got the pedigree. His brother was a very good cornerback with Oklahoma State. He could also play there too. And don't forget, Jahdae Barron actually was getting reps at that field cornerback position. He was the nickel cornerback last year, one of the best nickelbacks in the country. He was getting reps over there, so he could play there too. So I think overall, this is a very diverse secondary group. We'll see what they do.
Okay, that's the hit on the week. The miss on the week with Dom Williams, the defensive tackle, much, I don't want to say needed, but it would have been a great addition as an all Big 12 performer, first team last year for TCU, and goes to Oklahoma. So Texas is going to see him at least once a year.
Yeah. And so this miss lowers the floor on this Texas defensive line. I think Dominic Williams just raised the floor, allows more depth. I don't think he's this A-plus player that people are making him out to be. I know you've fan bases across the country and LSU, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Texas have kind of been making him out to be like the next Aaron Donald or something. Like if you read on Twitter, like we got to get this guy. He's a big miss, da-da-da-da-da. And he's getting some of the reports. I'm glad Texas didn't get him if they weren't willing to shell out the number that I've been hearing. It's like $700,000 to $1 million a year for him. And I just don't see that. I just don't see $700,000 to $1 million for someone like that. I think he's a nice player, but I think we have like one or two guys, maybe even more, 3 guys on the roster that are just as good as he is. I don't think he's, like I said, an all-world type talent. He is a good player, and I do think he helps with depth. I think Texas probably would have ponied up if they didn't get Bill Norton. Bill Norton, I think, is not as good as Dominic Williams, but I don't think he's like Dominic Williams is an A player and Bill Norton's a C player. I think it's a B plus to a B minus type move there. So I just don't understand why Texas fans are getting all angry about it. Another thing you got to realize, how this plays in the locker room. If he's like the third guy on the team, like when the season starts at Texas, and the first and second guy are like, hey, we're making this much and he's making like more than us, that can cause all types of dynamics in the locker room. So I'm personally fine with missing out. Does it hurt? Of course it does. I'm not going to sit here and say it wouldn't have helped our defensive line room, because it definitely would have. But is it end all be all? No. I think the one that hit, and I'm going to keep saying this, that hurts us the most was missing Jamari Caldwell. I think that one hurt way more than this when he went to Oregon. So is it a miss? Yeah. Will we get to see him late in October? Yeah. Hopefully we get to beat the crap out of him up front with our offensive line, but we'll see what happens.
Guess how many tackles for loss Aaron Donald had as a senior at Pitt?
Tackles for loss. Okay. How many he played 12 games, I'm guessing. So let's say 13 and a half, 14.
29.
Holy crap.
29 tackles for loss. He had 66 in his career, 29 his final season with 11 sacks. He had 2 11-sack seasons. Yeah, he's obviously, to even bring that guy up, he's one of the greatest players in the history of the NFL. What I think the dynamic is here, Matthew, is number one, the transfer portal gets a lot of attention. We're starving for news. We're starving for excitement. Fans are looking for the next, piece to the puzzle that could get them over the top. Dom Williams is a really good player. Absolutely, he's a really good player. But I think way too much is made out of not just him, all sorts of players, guys that are, backups to backups that are getting 10 and 12 tackles a year are being blown out of proportion because people just want news. I guarantee that even for very ardent college football fans, there were players taken in last week's NFL draft who are really good players, but because they signed somewhere, never moved, never transferred, and filled a position that generally doesn't have stats that you see on a regular basis, you didn't even know who they were. And they were really good players, and they got drafted in the first 3 or 4 rounds of the NFL draft. So don't make something out of somebody like Dominic Williams to be something that he's not.
Yeah, and it was just one of those things. They showed some of the clips when he was at LSU, and he's getting like bottle service at like this club, and I'm like, this guy's a good player and all, but he is not this guy. Like, I'm not giving this guy bottle service at a club down Baton Rouge. But they really needed him. If you look at their depth chart, they do not have any defensive tackle. So I understood their situation. And I guess there are reports of he was making like calls last minute, like, if you want me, bump up your offer. And to me, that's another thing too. If that's the number one goal for somebody, I don't want them on this team. Period. I don't. I saw how that worked down in College Station, where that was the number one goal of 90% of the guys on that team is let's get as much money as possible. And you saw how that turned out. And I love how Steve Sarkisian goes about this as the first thing we talk about is work in football. That will be the last thing we talk about as NIL. If you're bought into Texas, if Texas is your top 3 and you really want to come here, but you're a few dollars off, fine, we can talk that. But if all you want is money, we're good. And I think that's what it comes down to. And I think that's the right way to approach it.
Yeah, and it sounds like that's the approach of most of the best teams in the nation. that they know who they are. They know that they're going to get premium talent, and they want a certain mindset. And there's nothing wrong with having a business mindset and understanding, okay, the further you get along in this process, the more you become a businessman and you are working toward an NFL career. But if you're going to make a decision based on $50,000 or $100,000 a year, when you can look out for your future much better by aligning yourself with a school and a brand and a coaching staff and a team that's going to make you so much better than that, and maybe buy you 3 or 4 rounds in an NFL draft, or maybe even just guarantee that you get drafted instead of being an undrafted free agent and all of that. If you can't see that, then yeah, you're probably not necessarily looking at the big picture.
No, like if you're looking at a program and they offer you $1 million, but the one that's better developing offers you 500,000, if that's the difference between 2 or 3 rounds, you'll make up that money when you get drafted. So to me, I'm looking at development and stuff like that. And I think Texas, under Steve Sarkisian, look at the last 2 drafts. I think we're in the top 5 in drafted players. So that has to be a thing now. There's really no negative angle to recruit Texas. I think we give fair NIL deals. We're starting to recruit even higher than we have been, and we develop. So I mean, I wish them the best. I'm never going to wish any harm to a kid or anything like that. But Oklahoma really hasn't done much under Brent Venables. He hasn't really produced that much NFL talent. They've struggled mightily defensively, even though that's his side of the ball. So time will tell. We'll see if he made the right decision.
Leonard Taylor is a case in point. So Leonard Taylor was a 5-star that went to Miami, played 3 years. He was not a bust. He showed flashes. He had his particular games. He didn't turn out to be an all ACC type of player, but he was in that discussion as like a 3rd team honorable mention kind of player, because he definitely did show flashes, but didn't stay for the entire time, didn't get developed to the degree that he should have. I'm not going to speak to his effort or his investment in it, but a 5-star who actually was on the field playing and showed in spurts that he could be the fulfillment of a 5-star and an NFL player, did not get drafted. Now, if he shows up somewhere else, maybe he gets drafted.
Yeah, and that's a big money. Like if he goes somewhere, let's say he's a 3rd-round pick, you're losing out on, from undrafted 3rd-round pick, you're losing out over a 4-year deal, $10 million probably. So, I mean, that's a lot of money. And that's what the thing, NIL is cool and all, but you're never going to make that type of money unless you're a quarterback maybe and you're like Caleb Williams type level. But you got to look at development, in my opinion. That's got to be number one.